Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 404. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about running. This episode is inspired by a listener who wrote in to let me know, I would love to hear you talking about your running and your ongoing journey with that and what you're experiencing and how running helps you in other ways, fusing it all together somehow. So, in this episode, you will learn all about my running journey, what I'm currently experiencing in terms of my running, what I've learned from my running, what I'm curious about in relation to my running, what my plans are for running, how running helps me in other areas of my life, and why you don't have to run. You can have other adventures, and you can get all of these things that I'm getting from running by doing other things, because I know not everyone runs. Running is one of those like Marmite activities. You either love it or you hate it. And I was just sending a message to someone that I hadn't talked to in a long time, and he said to send greetings to my husband or something, and I said, oh, he's doing really well. You know, he's getting into ultra marathons. He ran 80 kilometers the other week, and the person responded, running. I can't even run a bath. And like I said, it's just, you either love it or you hate it. And I've been on both sides of that. Right now, obviously, I'm loving it, which is why I'm talking about this. So I hope you find this episode interesting and useful, and I hope that you get something out of it, even if you're not a runner, which is why I'm going to talk about how you can get all of these things from doing other things that are not running, because I know it's not for everyone. So, what is my running journey? I started running around 2012, 2013. Can't remember exactly when it was, but it was about that. I think it was 2012. And it was a really kind of dark, difficult period in my life. And I had never been an athletic person. I never played sports growing up, in high school, in elementary school, and university. Like, I was not a sporty person at all, and I thought I just wasn't. Like, I thought it was one of those things that you are genetically predisposed to being athletic or not, and I was not. And then I gained a few pounds, and that had never happened to me before, and I thought, I don't know what to do. And I'd been really sedentary, living a very stressful lifestyle, and so I emailed one of my friends from high school, who was very sporty. And it was funny, because most of my friends from high school were very sporty. Like, you know, a bunch of friends that played basketball and were on the swim team and did stuff like that, and I never did. Anyway, emailed one of my friends from high school, and I said, Amy, what do I do? And she said, you buy a pair of running shoes and you start running. And I was like, okay, I can do this. This is easy. I just have to buy the shoes. And so I did. And I started running. And 6 months after I started running, I ran a marathon, which I DNF'd for a variety of reasons. Mostly mindset. Yeah, it was really crappy. And DNFing that marathon, I did not finish the marathon. That's what DNF means. DNFing the marathon led to all kinds of mindset problems with running and my ability and my body being good enough to run a marathon. And I continued running for a while, and then I kind of quit. And I gave up running for years. And I remember at one point, years ago, like 10 years ago, asking my husband to never let me forget how much I loved running. Because I would go to the gym, I would get back into running, I would love it, I would feel so good. And I remember telling him, don't ever let me forget how much I love running. And then I would quit running. And he would try to remind me. He would always say, remember how much you love running. And I would just ignore him. Because when I was in those kind of dry periods of not running, I just couldn't tap into my love for running. I couldn't tap into how good it made me feel. It was like I would totally forget. And so I had these kind of like spurts of running and loving it and then not running it and hating it. And finally, a couple of years ago, once I started doing the advanced kickboxing ratings, I started running again just to train for those, because on the second day of the advanced gradings, we have to do a 2-hour run. It's not straight up 2 hours. It's like 2 hours of running plus fitness. So like you'll run for 20 minutes and then you'll have to do a bunch of squats, and then you'll run for 15, 20 minutes and you'll have to do, I don't know, straddle stands. And so it's a combination of running and fitness. It's not just straight 2 hours of running, but you do have to have a certain level of running fitness to do it, because that is sandwiched by, another 11 hours of kickboxing. So you've got 5 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday. So you've got a lot of other physical stuff on the other side of that. So you've got to have a certain level of fitness to do this. So I started running, but never ran more than like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and didn't enjoy it. It was just something I did because I had to get to this certain fitness level so I could do my gradings. And then last year, thanks to COVID, kickboxing classes went online, and that just didn't fit into my lifestyle because we have a really small house, and the only place that I can really do kickboxing in the house is downstairs in my husband's office, and I can't, I could kick him out of his office, but that would be crappy. So I didn't. And so I started running because I thought, well, I don't know how long this thing is going to last. I've got to stay in shape, so I guess running is the easiest thing to do. And for the longest time, I never ran more than 30 minutes because I thought that was my limit. Like, running 30 minutes was hard, and I didn't enjoy it, but I did it because I didn't know what else to do to stay in shape. And then August came, and that was when I got Lyme disease and felt like crap and could barely walk up a flight of stairs in my house without huffing and puffing like I just hiked a mountain. So I was doing nothing. Like, I was just doing the bare minimum. I wasn't even going out on long walks. I wasn't doing anything. I was just kind of resting as I took my 3 weeks of doxycycline. And then that was the point when my husband and I started watching these documentaries about ultra runners. And I don't even know why we started doing this, but I got obsessed with them. And this dream was planted in my mind. And I thought, God, what if I could run ultras? And I remember at one point thinking, oh no, but I'm too old. I'm in my late 40s. I'm too old. And then in one of the documentaries, one of the runners was commenting to another runner about this guy who was really young and he was a really good ultra runner. And they said, that's really weird because he's in his early 20s and most ultra runners are in their late 40s and 50s. And that was when like a light bulb went on. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm not too old. Maybe I can do this. And then, I never really thought about it, but probably the reason that most ultra runners are in their 40s and 50s is because they've been running since high school and they now have the fitness to run ultra marathons. I don't know. But I didn't think about it that way at the time. I just thought, oh, maybe I'm not too old, so maybe I could do this. And so I just started increasing my runs beyond 30 minutes. And I realized something huge. I realized that the first 30 minutes of my runs were the hard part. And beyond that, it gets easier. But I never knew this because I never got beyond 30 minutes for years. And now that I know the first 30 minutes or 20 minutes is the hard part, and then after that I get into flow and it just goes beautifully and it's easier. Like, that just completely changed everything. But I never would have learned that if I hadn't stretched myself beyond those 30 minutes that I thought were the most I could do. And then I started doing sessions with my friend Cara Wilde, with Jane Talbot, who was a guest on this podcast, working on my sports mindset. With Cara, I really dug deep into that marathon DNF, and we explored the reasons why, and we explored all of the limiting beliefs that I developed as a result of it, and we cleared those. We did a lot of work with EFT and just cleared a bunch of crap. That really, really helped me. I did, I don't know how many sessions with Jane, NLP sessions, doing timeline therapy to help me just implant a new vision of what was possible. And it really, really, really changed things for me. I remember one session with Jane, I think it was the last session I had with her. She said it would take about 3 months for that change, for me to feel the change. And those 3 months happened in between a marathon length run that I ran this year and an ultra that I did, a 55K run. And the marathon, which I've talked about in episode 395, How to Know When to Quit Your Adventures, when I was running the marathon, I wanted to quit it. Halfway through, I met up with my husband and I was like, I'm going home with you in the car. I'm done. And he encouraged me to finish it. And obviously I was thrilled that I finished it. And I felt like I had kind of busted that limit of mine. and I'd finally achieved my marathon. But it was rough. On the other hand, I ran, a month later, 55 kilometers, and it was easy. Like physically it was hard. Like I had donated blood less than a week before. And so that wasn't super smart because even though my plasma was up to normal levels, it takes between 2 to 3 weeks to replace your platelets. So I didn't have a lot of energy. Physically it was challenging, but mentally it was a breeze. And at no point did I ever think about quitting. And after that, I went back and I checked my journal and I was like, when was that I had the session with Jane? Didn't she say it would take 3 months to kick in? And that was when I confirmed that those 3 months had happened in between the marathon and the ultra. So mindset work, I know I've been talking about this for years. It makes a difference. And if you're struggling with mindset in any area of your life, get help. Or learn how to work with yourself using something like Psych-K to shift your own mindset and shift your own limiting beliefs. It is absolutely life-changing stuff. So that's my journey to where I am now. What am I currently experiencing? Like I said, I ran 55 kilometers a few weeks ago. It was a glorious day. The weather was beautiful. It was kind of one of the first sunshiny days. The trails were dry. We had such a wet, muddy winter, and it was just so beautiful to be out on dry trails because it was still really muddy during the marathon, and that made it rough. It was just absolutely lovely. So what's next on my calendar in the coming kind of weeks and month is I'm updating my books on the Way South Path and the Downs Link. And what I'm doing is I'm walking both of those trails in one day. Now, these are trails that I used to walk over the course of 3 days. The Way South Path I once walked over the course of 2 days and found it really, really challenging. Well, a couple weeks ago, I walked it in 1 day, and it was challenging, but it was totally doable, and it was pleasurable. It was beautiful. So I'm going to be running the Way South Path in this week, I think is when this goes live. Then next month, I'll be walking and then running the Downs Link. And those are my kind of immediate goals with running. My plans for the rest of this year, I've got 2 100K ultras that I'm probably going to run. I'm hoping to get to the point where I need to be with my training by my July ultra. It's got an 18-hour cutoff time, which should be doable. And then in September, I've got another one, which I'm kind of worried about because it's a really flat course, which I think is going to be tough. The Way South Path, the first 2/3 of it are flat, and it was tough. Like flat trails, you think they're easy, but they're really not because you're just using your muscles in the same way for hours on end. Whereas if you've got hills, you're using your muscles differently and somehow it's easier. And then in 2022, I know I told you months ago that I had this secret dream of running the South Downs Way. I'm starting to think that I might do that next year in 2022. And that would be just absolutely wild because the South Downs Way is something that I struggled to walk in 8 days back in, it was 2015. And then I had a beautiful experience walking it in 7 days just a couple of years ago. But still, this is a trail that I took a week to walk. And the thought of running it in one go, that's going to be a huge shift for me, like a huge shift in my perspective of what I'm capable of. And of course, I have yet to do it, so I don't know if I'm capable of doing it. But I'm going to definitely train for it, and that is my plan. And I remember when I mentioned that on this podcast, that was truly a secret goal for me. Like, I did not think I could ever do that. And when I blurted it out on the podcast, and I don't remember what episode that was, but I remember thinking, holy shit, how did I just say that to the podcast? Like, now they know my secret goal. They know my secret fantasy. And now I'm at the point where I can say, I think I can do that next year. I mean, depending on how I do in these 100K races this year, that's what's going to help me decide what I'm going to do next year. But I think it's reasonable based on how my training is going. And that's a massive shift. Like, I can't believe I'm saying right now, I think that's doable, but I think it's doable. So what have I learned? I have learned that running ultras and walking ultras are mutually beneficial. Because running is a higher intensity activity that I can do in less time, so obviously it takes less time to run 50K than it does to walk 50K, and walking is lower intensity, but it takes longer, so it's more time on my feet. They help each other. So I found that when I run a long distance trail, that helps my walking, and the walking helps the running. It's been really interesting to see how both of those activities help each other. So that's one thing that I've learned. And I'm really glad that I'm continuing to train in this way, kind of stretching myself with my walking distances and my running distances. I've also learned that I am capable of more than I ever thought I was physically. Like, I DNF'd that marathon in my late 20s, like I was almost 30. Maybe I was 30, but thereabouts. And now I'm going to be 48 this year. So I'm 18 years older. And yet I'm doing things that I couldn't complete almost 20 years ago. So I'm capable of doing more than I ever thought I was. You know, my health was really crappy for years, had really low energy because of my thyroid and who knows what else. Fasting completely transformed my life and gave me the energy that I thought I'd lost forever. And now I'm capable of running these beautiful distances. I really, really love being out on the trail all day long. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And I'm in the best shape that I've been for years. Years. I can feel, now that we're getting back into outdoors kickboxing classes, I can feel that I'm in better shape than I've been in before we went into lockdown last year. And I was doing kickboxing on a regular basis. Like, I'm better when we're running in class, obviously. I'm better when we're doing the drills. Like, I'm in much better shape. And so that makes me curious. Like, I'm really curious about how my running is going to help me with sparring once we get back into that, and with my kickboxing. And I'm also curious about how my running is going to help me with endurance for my black belt grading. Because one of the things, the advanced gradings are really challenging. Like I said, it's 13 hours of really intense fitness stuff spread over 2 days. And at the end of each advanced grading, I always felt like I was barely hanging on. And I know that my black belt grading is going to be so much harder than anything I've ever done in terms of kickboxing, as it should be. But I know it's going to be a massive, massive challenge, and I'm really curious to see how my running is going to help me with this. I hope, it's going to help with my endurance, because I'm going to need it. I'm also curious about how far can I go? Like, for a long time, I've thought 100 miles is my maximum. I have no interest in going beyond 100 miles. But then today I was just reading this story in Facebook, in this women's running and trail running and ultra running Facebook group. And it's a great resource for just tips and information and people sharing stories. And it's really beautiful. And this woman was sharing the story about how she ran 200 miles last weekend. And she was the second woman in the history of this race to finish it. And she was the only woman who finished it this year. And I was reading that and I was thinking, ooh, 200 miles. That's interesting. So I don't know. You know, I always thought I would never be interested in these really long races. Like 100 miles was my limit. That was the most I was going to attempt. But now I'm starting to think, what if? Could I? And, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'll never do that. But my mind is open to those things. My mind is open to things that I never thought I could do, that I never even fantasized about, that I never even entertained the possibility of. And I think that's one of the ways that running has helped me in other areas of my life, because I have opened my mind to new possibilities in running, and that's opening my mind to new possibilities in other areas of my life. And I think that's always a good thing, is to see new potential, see new paths, see new ways of doing things. And it's really exciting. There are so many things that running has given me in terms of help in other areas of my life. It's given me resilience, you know, getting beyond those challenges. When I ran that marathon length run this year and I wanted to quit halfway through and I didn't, it was tough. It wasn't easy, but I enjoyed a lot of it. I enjoyed most of it. And I achieved a massive goal for myself because I had so many hangups over that marathon length run because of my DNF all those years ago. So, you know, resilience, perseverance, not quitting, keeping going, stretching beyond my comfort zone, stretching beyond that comfort zone of 30 minutes, thinking 30 minutes was all I could do. And now I'm running hours and hours. And as I was kind of researching this episode, because I wanted to see, like, how does running help people in other areas of their life? And I'll link to some articles in the show notes. So I've got one article on 10 amazing and evidence-supported health benefits of running, 8 key ways running can transform your body and brain, and 74 benefits of running backed by science. One of the things that a lot of these articles mentioned was sleep. And for a long time, I really struggled to get to sleep, and I was toning. And it was just really challenging to get to sleep. And this year I found a really good technique to get to sleep, which is, I think it's called cognitive dissonance or something, but you make lists of unrelated things. So you relax your body and then you start making these lists of completely unrelated things like dog, food, table, walnut, flower, green, that kind of thing. And what it does is it prevents your mind from going off on any train of thought, and you fall asleep really fast. But now I'm wondering if running has also helped with that. I really wouldn't be surprised if it did. So I've got this technique that helps me get to sleep fast, but I'm also sleeping really deeply, and I'm sleeping really well. And I suspect that running has helped me. Now, I haven't been to the doctor in over a year because COVID makes it hard to get to the doctor. And I haven't needed to. I mean, even when I had Lyme disease last year, it was all on telephone. I didn't actually get to see a doctor. It was like texting pictures of my tick bites and talking on the phone and then getting a prescription. But I would be very curious, whenever it is that we can get blood work done again, how, my blood pressure's improved, how other aspects of my health have improved. Be really, really curious about that as well. I'm sure it has. And finally, as I wanted to say, you don't have to run. You can have other adventures. You can have these experiences by doing other things, by walking, by cycling, hiking, whatever it is that you enjoy. And so, if you want to have these experiences, just try pushing yourself beyond what you think is possible. So what I did was I just increased by 10% each week. And you could do that, increase by 10% every fortnight or every month or like whatever you think is doable. But I would encourage you to just, stretch beyond that comfort zone. And what I did was, usually what running coaches will recommend that you do is increase your overall mileage by 10% each week. I did not do that. I increased my long run by 10% each week. So I was running, I think, 3 times a week, which probably isn't enough. Like I probably should have been running more, but it worked. So I would do 2-hour-long runs, and then my third run would be a longer run. And that long run I increased by 10% each week. So you could do that with your walks, your hikes, your cycling, whatever. So just, increase that long run, walk, whatever by 10% each week or each fortnight. And then when you get stuck, when you hit a wall, get help when you need it. Work with a mindset person, work with a coach. My husband's been working with a running coach for months. He started at the end of last year. I think it was after he ran his first ultra and then signed up for a ton of ultras this year. He started working with a running coach, and he gave him a really clear plan. He gets calls with him every once in a while to kind of fine-tune details. But basically, he's got a plan to get him to the races that he's doing this year. And I think he's got a 100-mile this year. So he's quite a bit ahead of me. So get help when you need it. I haven't signed up to work with a running coach because I'm just not very good at following a plan, especially if it's other people's plans. I don't know. I'm really resistant to it. But I think that if I do finish my 100K races this year, and I decide to go for 100 miles next year, I'm definitely going to get some help because I feel like I'm going to need it in order to enjoy the 100-mile race, because I don't want to just suffer through 100 miles. I want to enjoy the process. And I know in ultras you have ups and downs. They say you go through the whole range of emotions, but I would like to enjoy it as much as possible. And I would like to do that by training the way I need to train. So, you can download training plans online or you can work with someone. But remember to get help when you need it. But I would really encourage you, whatever sport it is that you do or adventure or outdoors thing, encourage yourself to move beyond what you think is possible for yourself. Encourage yourself to stretch outside of that comfort zone and see what happens, because There's so many beautiful possibilities. And as I always say, when you stretch outside of your comfort zone in one area of your life, it will stretch in so many other areas of your life. So it will help you with business, with work, with creativity, with so many other things. It's really, really beautiful. So that is my suggestion to you. And I hope you found this episode interesting and useful. I always find it always feels very kind of self-indulgent to talk about myself. And so I feel like I have to make sure that it's useful to you, because I don't want you to just listen to me and my babbling for half an hour about my own life without serving a purpose in some way. But I would also like to remind you that this topic was recommended to me by a listener. So if you have any ideas of things you would like me to talk about on this podcast, please drop me a line and let me know. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. Email is usually best. I'm pretty bad about checking Facebook and Instagram messages and Twitter, but I do. So I will get to it, probably not as fast as email, but I will see it. So thank you for listening. And remember to visit hollyworton.com/404 for the show notes on this episode. And next week, I hope to be back with Carrie Ann McKenzie, the tree communicator who was on this show just a few weeks ago, episode 392. And she's going to be interviewing me. Now, I thought that episode was going to go live this week, but we had to switch things around on the calendar. So hopefully it will be next week. I'm really, really looking forward to that. And that's all for now. Have a great week and let me know if you have any topics for the podcast. I would love to hear from you. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.